Of Kittens and Broken Things, Chapter 32. Thane returned to Kara's cabin approximately 2 hours later, having exchanged venom, anecdotal experience, and scans for Morden's expertise on creative pharmacy. Thane believed Morden would have aided her without a bribe, so his venom was an exchange among allies to further a team's interest, not a cross-purpose accounting of favors. Considering anybody to be an ally was becoming a treasured luxury, with the attendant fear of loss and suspicion of veracity. Here he was exposed to extraordinary people, exceptions in their field or species, superlative in one form or another, putting aside lucre, status, and life expectancy for a cause. Anybody who had cleared the hurdles of passing Kara's judgment and survived in this environment earned Thane's respect. He believed Dr. Shakwas would likely have covered for Kara if approached discreetly. It was likely true that Kara feared giving herself away when she chose to suffer. Kara had inspired Tisoni and Vicarian to aid her on her mission to stop Saren, but they had seen beyond her acting ability, as had Thane. Moreau and Shakwas had returned to her command. The crew Kara had gathered was inspired by her, if occasionally bewildered. He believed Kara's crew to be loyal to her personally, but he was aware she wanted to create no ethical conflict for them. Fortunately, Morden had no ethical conflict. Had Kara not approved of Morden's intervention, Thane would have had few options other than what mitigation skin contact with his venom would provide. Regardless of the efficacy of an envenomed kiss to aid her, even with its justification of sparing her excruciating pain, he would not have given it. As he had mentioned to her, ego was often part of his calculations, and here had a tactical and personal significance. She had not spurned him, but she had held him back. She was still, and always, attracted to him. He preferred that she experienced that fully, without him mitigating it or making certain she knew he was available. Until the necessity of a kiss had presented itself as a practical concern, he had been unaware that he had already decided. His kiss would not be impulse or utility. He would enjoy the ability to put his hands on her, to smooth venom into her blood and thought into or out of her mind. But his hands would never stray. Any assumption of erosion or incursion into her will over her body would have to be explicitly and definitively countered. She would have to convince him. She would have her faculties, and she would make a choice. It would not be stolen. His pride and vanity were strong things, with their own motivations and opinions, more than sufficient to keep him from theft of what she would not give, or begging for scraps of affection. He knew he could, as Vicarian feared for excellent reasons, abuse his power over her and wipe her memory repeatedly. He could have her kiss, her passion, her body, and her devotion, as well as her already existing love. Instead, his pride, vanity, and path demanded he would only have those things if she gave them, knew she was giving them, and committed herself to him with the unquestioning faith she was uniquely capable of generating. An extension of the unquestioning faith she already had in him for reasons that defied reason and followed only Kara's rhyme. She was a goal in her own right. Without doubt, he wished to have free rein over her body as he had free rein over her mind. But she was a person and a symbol. She was as a person, unpredictably and devastatingly attractive. He was never braced sufficiently for its strength. The unpredictability of that made him lose his control over the sensation. It could fade to friendly, protective, almost parental or mentor in character. And then with a word or a glance or a turn of her mind, he was suddenly submerged in the need to disregard her will and assert his own. It required her presence. It required her strange alchemy that would spark and smoke in him as she was blithely unaware of the effect she had. These moments he recalled endlessly. He had summoned the sensation of those urges countless times, transformed those moments into launch points to his preferred outcomes. His memories of Irikah were venom-blurred and so very drell. A dance with each move, every turn of a wrist or sigh, sacred and ordained. Perfect. Kara was not perfect, and his fantasies did not make her so, but made her instead elemental, unpredictable, shocks and lightning. Green eyes. Always her eyes. Delicate and expressive, and her capacity to see, her urge to protect, her fire that defied whatever she chose. Irikah was a dance whose steps he knew like his own breath, every memory treasured. Kara was and would be unpredictable and unimaginable. Her lack of sophistication or expectation somehow wrapped into the entirety of the storm. Something in him that was young, free, and determined. His answering rhyme without reason invested his arms with the need to have the right to carry her away to wherever he chose. Kiss her until her secrets spilled not from venom, but because they belonged to him. Some part of him had decided that had they met 3 years ago, he would have saved her, would have had years with her, and nothing could convince him otherwise. That faith was unreasonable, unpredictable, and invested with the passion of parts of him he believed long subdued and silent. Some part of him rose up in the presence of her defiance and answered her with his own. He was capable of keeping up all appearance of his desire being a warm thing that smoldered. But his experience was of the unpredictable passion she evoked in him, of the seemingly banked embers, revealing themselves to be volcanic and under pressure. It was becoming more predictable not in its effect, but its persistence, his guard around her increasing. Still never enough. Yet separate from her as a person was her as a symbol, the living conduit and connection to every other goal and person that had meaning to him. She had opposed Reapers when he had not known to do that himself. She had brought Irikah back to light his heart. She had saved Kolyat. She must be protected. She must be preserved. And if she chose to be protected and preserved from him, so be it. She would decide. The odds were low that she would choose him as a mate, yet not impossible. It would be mate, not partner. He no longer had interest in fleeting opportunity, only definitive commitment. Impossibility was something she courted. He would do the same. She had chosen him as a companion, and he would not waste that opportunity or take it for granted by asking for more than she could give. That it would require that Vicarian be gone and proven never worthy of her regard was present in his mind, but again, pride and demand guided him as well. He could not stoop to conquer. It would be unworthy of him, unworthy of her, even unworthy of Vicarian. It would be unworthy of his path. Instead of moving to her bedside and checking her temperature with a pass of his palm, and then settling the blankets around her, which he did dutifully, he could choose other actions. He could, with whispers Edie would never hear, and words Kara would never remember, cause her to wake ravenous for him. Orbiston would be asked to leave the ship. Thane would convince Kara to never speak to or meet with Vicarian again, deny him entry to her life. Thane could be a gatekeeper that isolated and monopolized her body and mind. He could watch and guard her every moment of their fight. He could be there for her without serving another master, as Vicarian did. She would have undivided and unalloyed devotion. She would not turn him away. Now would be the perfect time to do it, with Vicarian vulnerable to rejection and Kara in pain, easily influenced. A small twist to her memory, to make her believe Vicarian had claimed their bond ended due to her humanity and incompatibility. A communication to Vicarian from her, requesting he not attempt to speak to her again. Done under compelled circumstances, she would be convincing, and Vicarian self-hating enough to permit it. It was unworthy. He had apologized to her for sexually objectifying her. He had not stopped doing it. Her odd blend of foolishness and vulnerability enhanced his revised fantasies. He no longer imagined pulling her to him over a Panifa board for momentary and fleeting pleasure and proximity to power. His desires had changed, and he wanted everything she had to give, along with her will dedicated to giving it. Nothing less. His pride would not permit Vicarian's love to be perceived in a way that was not entirely eclipsed by the love she could feel for Thane. She had quite a bit of work to do if Thane were to find her worthy of his attention. He smiled at the idea, a half twist to his lips. That he was much more interested in theoretical devotion than any scrap of real attention. He would never kiss her with distressed confusion in her eyes. She would meet him on his terms, or not at all. It was not the gods demanding that he be fair or kind. It was a product of his own ego, and it would serve as a deterrent from stealing a kiss or sowing a petty thought. He believed that had Vicarian not been there, she would already be standing at his side. She saw it. She knew it. It drew him to see and know. It was true somewhere in her mind. She had faith in him. She trusted him. Their potential mating was true somewhere in her mind, and that made it possible for him to rely on the reward of what was unspoken but ever present in her deep green sea. His path had signposts, and he had a compass, and the compass was her will. It would guide him, and it was strong. If she chose him at any point on her path, it would not be through a shift of uncertain sand that could shift back or be regretted. He would not lean to her or lose his balance, seeking a moment that may or may not come. She would create a life and devotion that she was capable of creating, or it would not exist. The reality was that bond to Vicarian did not have the same effect upon Kara that it had upon Vicarian. Vicarian had no other choice. Kara did. She wished to behave as though she were Turian, and had no choice, but she was attracted to Thane. Her rushing heartbeat and breath and the flush of her skin making that clear. Thane believed he would always have that reaction from her. It was in her nature. She no longer attempted to deny it. And upon his discovery of it, she had not been outraged, but conciliatory, as though he deserved to know it, to own it, and keeping it from him had made her feel guilty. She believed she was withholding something he deserved. Irikah and Vicarian were shields and mirrors. They were not the full truth. He understood his attraction to her, but there was still mystery as to why she trusted him, why she allowed herself to be guided by him, why she allowed and did not protest venom. Not all of her secrets had been observed or explained, and until they were, or until he was beyond her call, and with Irikah on the shores, or whatever awaited him after death, he would never fail to appreciate the solid trust in her eyes, the pounding of her heart, and the catch of her breath in his presence. It was more than enough as it stood for a man who had expected to die in obscurity and disgrace. She had granted him opportunities to set his life in further order, an inspiration. It was not a question of whether or not he could have her. He could, without a doubt. Now the question was whether or not Vicarian had earned enough loyalty from her to overwhelm whatever it was Kara kept in her mind and her blood that belonged to Thane. Thane had given her so many reasons to kill him or reject him. It seemed no intrusion or invasion would ever cause her to ask him to leave. Thane recalled her being held in her unconsummated bondmate's arms as she quietly defied Vicarian's will and told him he could not reject Thane's aid and he could not seek to kill the man who proposed touching her publicly. You have taken risks for me, Lissam. You have placed your life, your command, your bondmate's life and career, as well as your crew at risk. For me. And I wish to know why. I wish for you to tell me why, because I deserve to be told. I wish to feel your lips, your body under mine before I die, and have the truth spill from you, because it is what you have to give to me, without pretense or shield. That his choice to not kiss her had the benefit of not mitigating pain that Vakarian had caused was one of the oddly clashing and dovetailing characteristics of their combined efforts on this torturous path. The final and highest goal was disruption and destruction of Reaper forces. She was the light on that path. Her will was absolute, and her kiss would not be tentative or situational. It would not be to mitigate pain. They both knew pain. She would endure with what venom could be taken through her skin. Thane's kiss would come at a higher price. He chose all or nothing. I pledged my arm and my spirit. My ardor is free. My mouth and my body would require you granting your arm and spirit to me, Visam. As for mitigating her pain, he could take what precautions he could to arrange for a stock of medications more suitable to humans. Since she would not do that for herself, he would avail himself of Dr. Solus's recommendations. Morden had offered 2 solutions, one of step-down effect, to be taken to hold off a full-blown withdrawal before the disastrous cascade started, and a potential formula to suppress a full absorption of reverie to be taken before contact. Thane had brought with him a recommended first meal, toast and juice, to keep her stomach from rebellion. He set it aside. Kara would in theory sleep for 5 more hours. He was ever aware that he was potentially always watched on this ship, every moment. EDI was inextricably linked to potential monitoring. EDI was capable of obtaining and interpreting monitoring that he could not hack or alter. As an unshackled AI, her limits were few. She could not be bypassed. He could only attempt to gain her cooperation and understanding, if not collusion. It was reassuring to think that EDI could have been monitoring Kara's health or status from a non-critical viewpoint that would have detected life-threatening health risks and called for assistance had Kara been in extremis. Thane was certainly an anomaly from EDI's point of view, at least his presence in Kara's cabin. He had developed a relationship with EDI to whatever extent a Drell could arrange with an unshackled AI, so much of EDI's potential unknown and unfathomable. He did believe her to be loyal to Kara, likely guarding her secrets as zealously as Thane did. Had EDI wished to betray them, they would have died on the collector ship when the stress of unshackling and insurgent ability had the highest chance of causing it. He had an established prerogative in his perceived role as her confidant and friend. He would extend that definition to include lover and protector among the crew, as well as the ship herself, to widen his advantage. EDI would not comprehend the interactions of assassin venom or reverie with Kara's presentation. There was no research available on either subject that would help EDI predict outcome. Her monitoring might be omniscient, but not likely accurately interpretive. There was nothing to be done if EDI was indiscreet or spoke of what she knew. She had already observed Kara's conversations with Vakarian if she had been monitoring and retaining that information rather than wiping it. She had goddess-like powers over their lives. He would have to risk her caprice and court accord. The threat EDI posed to their lives overshadowed the threat to Kara's social situation. Kara chose to remain on the Normandy and trusted EDI. He had no choice. He would abide by that. He was wealthy but did not have a viable alternative ship to offer if he objected to EDI's potential for havoc. He must make his relationship to Kara privately intimate, if not privately sexual, and cultivate EDI's trust and regard. If EDI watched him as closely as he watched EDI, perhaps that was best for all. In Kara's absence during the week, Thane had done what he could to gather information and gain the confidence of crew. Orbiston no longer expressed dislike, though they had not spoken privately. The ship was not a place for such discussions. There was eye contact and tentative accord, and that was all that was necessary. The mood on the ship was celebratory still from the collectorship mission. Thane had engaged in card games and drinking games, relaxed and friendly. He had appeared to be intoxicated and appeared to lose, though both of those things had been feigned. He had taken a great deal of ribbing about his ability to comprehend the nuances of card games. He had claimed he was a beginner and lost money. He had given the impression that if someone wished to bring something to Shepard's attention, he would provide a path to her. Kasumi had a concern that Kara had not addressed, and he had spoken to her at length on the subject. Kasumi was unaware that asking Kara to infiltrate a social gathering populated by criminals was a potentially lethal mistake. He doubted Kara would agree to it on her own for excellent reasons. However, he could and had arranged for his own invitation to the Hawk estate under an alias, and he would escort her through. Kasumi would attribute the success to Shepard. He closed his eyes for a moment, considered his adrenaline and anger, and chose to meditate. He did not wish to expose her to the relative chaos that was his thought process at the moment. He would be calm, and he would have answers for her when she woke. He would have a direction for her to take to strengthen her reputation with her crew. He would make sure she could eat without her body rejecting it entirely. He would make sure she would not make the mistake of shutting him out again. An hour before he planned to wake her, he eased her into his lap, still in the bed, in the same position where he had held her before he'd left to speak to Morden, when he'd worked venom and whispers into her slowly, his mouth at her ear. He was certain many of his words did not translate into English. They were Drell idiom and image. Poetic. It was a many-purposed pleasure and privilege to touch her skin, to claim the right to watch over her, to share her bed. She would wake with less panic, less pain. It would mitigate what psychological pain she would otherwise experience and help her step back into her life on the ship rather than stumble. He took the opportunity to establish his right to be here, to reinforce that the outcome with him involved would be better than what she could get for herself, the same way her odds of a mission succeeding were better with his presence on her squad. He provided priming regarding coming to him for help. At the moment, he was in the physical position of a lover, but he would embody being her protector. The taken intimacy, extending and not threatening trust. Her categories and potentials fell away, and so did his. She was a young woman in pain, experiencing loss. Loss and devotion were in his hands and voice, obsession fallen away and unnecessary to the moment. He could give her something she would always understand, and had not rejected other than to feel herself unworthy of it at times. Kindness. Though she had secrets, those secrets had patterns, and he knew where to walk. She had her own intimacies, her own rules, and he was so far into her mind and story that she willingly collapsed from command before him, allowed him to press venom into her skin, and considered him a refuge. That is what he would be for her. All other motivations would stay outside, restless and hungry, until or unless she invited them in, one by one, or until he crossed back over the boundaries he respected in her presence, in order to indulge in the fantasy of a woman that grew clearer and more compelling, and more his. It did not matter that she'd spent a week with Vakarian. He was here, now, and she needed him. If he knew his Lassam, she would be melting gratitude, and would not permit, or even perhaps feel, outrage at any potential intrusion. She would accept him here as necessity, with her attendant blush and heart rush, her faith sustaining and innocent. That was her paradoxical power, to look at him with so much trust that he did not wish under any circumstances to disappoint her. He was smiling when she woke, when her breathing altered from the deeper rhythm of sleep. He did not speak. He waited for her. After a time during which his smile grew, she said, "Oops." This sound had no translation, but the tone was conciliatory, not angry. What does oops mean? It means I woke up, and if I'm right, I'm under the influence of serious pharmaceuticals, reverie withdrawal, and venom. Correct. Oops. Is that a term of distress? Well, I don't think I can do any more damage. It seems there's someone holding me down. Not down. Simply still. You being disoriented and possibly willing to extend self-harm was not out of the question. It wasn't self-harm. Then what was it? Oops. I see. I don't. I believe you. Are you hungry, Lassam? Ugh, no. Food has not been easy. We made ourselves eat, but it made me nauseated. But we did eat. I'm not malnourished. I'm also not really tired. How long did I sleep? 8 hours. You don't have to hold me still. I promise to not break anything important, including myself. And if I do not have to hold you still, but I wish to, then I don't know what to do with that. Her heart rate was elevated, her skin rushing with blood, and he was content. Tell me about your week. It was heaven for 2 people. At the end of the week, we had to think about other people, and we had to leave. He did most of the thinking and planning. Mostly, I was only capable of crying and being quiet by the time we left. Did he hurt you? Yes. His arms tensed, and he drew in a sharp breath, not knowing what he'd say on the out-breath, but she said, "It was wonderful," as she bubbled over with blushing enthusiasm. He started to laugh, and then so did she, and she was snorting giggles long after his arms had loosely closed around her waist, with her leaning back against him. You did that on purpose. Couldn't resist. He shook his head, then eased himself from the bed with his hands in a careful ruffle of her hair. He brought her breakfast, though she still did not want it. He asked her to eat it, and she did, softly giggling, smiling between taking bites. Her smile faded after her duty was complete. She had reassured him, and he had assured himself that she was herself. I have a headache. I'm probably gonna have a headache for a while, but it doesn't hurt as much as it did. She did not speak of whatever else dragged her smile from her. There was more. She missed Vicarian. She missed being herself. But she was determined to be Shepard. Thane handed her a tablet, and she stared at it in her palm. I'd rather just have the headache. Thane met her eyes. Listen, we do not know exactly what happens to you in reverie, but we do know it is strong. And if the medications Morden gave you worked, it means you are deeply addicted. I have seen this in enough people to know, and I went through my own period of being addicted to the stages of increasing virulence of my own venom. I have adapted. I get a constant dose and I am effectively immune. But I remember. Her eyes met his, and he was struck by the tides of the sea. You were addicted to yourself? Yes. I became addicted to what they introduced into my system to make me what I am. Kara, my training was insidious and brutal. I am still under the influences of years of conditioning and chemical control. They determined everything. My diet, the drugs I took, the surgery I had. And any pain that resulted was endured, not mitigated in any way. I do not wish to see you in pain that can be prevented. You must understand. I would see that as torture. If I can prevent your suffering, I feel I must. Your choices have consequences. Choosing to simply weather them without assistance will not bring you relief, any more than someone choosing to believe that Reapers do not exist will keep them safe. That was mean, that Reaper thing you just said. Listen, you need to adjust to life with reverie. You need to be able to transition, and since reverie is external chemistry to which you are not adapted, we need to develop external chemistry to ease the effect. I'm sorry nobody was there to help you when you were a child. I'm sorry if I'm rejecting help you know I need. I don't want to need it. Do you also not want to need me? No, that isn't true. I don't want to be a burden. I want to solve problems, not create them. Listen, in my life I have inspired suspicion and fear for excellent reasons. Yet you woke in my arms and you knew I would not harm you. I am a man of great potential for harm, yet you trust me. Trust Morden. This is his area of expertise. If he believed you would not benefit from this, he would not suggest it. I will watch, and I promise you, I will not allow harm to come to you. I will not allow the medication to take you from yourself. I wish for you to have your fight, and have your heart and mind. She looked down at the tablet in her palm again. I'm complaining to a man who lost his wife about being separated from her bondmate after a week of bliss. I'm waking up from a near coma he had to put me in because I don't know how. She swallowed the tablet. I'm sorry, Thane. I don't know how to do this. You do. You will, or we will. You are not alone, Lisa. You did all your suffering alone. Something we share in impulse. I wish to change that for you. How are you suffering, Thane? In ways I can't help you? In ways I don't see? Between us, Lisa, I was not the one with a week of life and psyche-shattering experiences. I am well, comparatively. You asked me if I would want to know, want to help if you were in pain? I know I've got venom and who knows what in my veins, but I do want to help, if I can. I trust you. That has never been in doubt. You have helped. I have not had a friend, Kara. I consider you a friend. So, life and psyche-shattering experiences, huh? We cannot always settle for simply being shot. Yeah, that's easier. Being dead was easier. It was quiet. Do you remember nothing of that time? No, nothing. These are at least better memories, though they hurt. Morden has hopes for solutions that could prevent reverie from affecting you as much. I relayed some Turian solutions to Counselor Vicarian. She smiled at him. Thank you. You're never going to call him Garrus, are you? He has not invited me to do so. He is not a friend. You talked to him? I assured him that you were well, updated him on your circumstances, showed him that you were resting peacefully, told him that I knew you would have wanted him to know. Thank you. I wish you were friends. Given that he is jealous of my access, that is not likely. I know. Was he okay? No, though he wished to give you that impression. He did not want you to worry. When I spoke to him, he was in the shuttle, on automatic. He is likely docked by now. I arranged for Morden's recommendations to be available on his arrival. Aren't we a bunch of stupidly noble... I don't have a word. I don't swear. I'm attempting to be merely noble. Go you! It's working for you. Are you going to insist on working today? Oh, yeah. Then allow me to stay with you. I can brief you on crew. I can relay what I have learned in this last week. Her eyes crested with tears. Thane, I don't have words for what you've done. What you've given me. I have taken as well, Lissam. And if you hadn't... I didn't even see it. I couldn't describe it. I saw. I wish I could tell you that I saw, but I didn't. I don't know about you. I want to. You will work, and then if you wish, we will speak this evening, if you are able. Thank you. My truths are yours, Lissam. I know, and you know, not all of them, and not completely, just as your gratitude or friendship can only take a certain shape. But always be assured, Kara, you are a fierce friend to have. I am blessed. A fierce, slightly dizzy friend. In that, as in all things, Lissam, I offer my arm